Hello, everyone. In an unexpected and historic announcement that has sent shockwaves through political, military, and humanitarian circles across the globe, Hamas has officially declared the Gaza war completely over, marking what could be the end of one of the most devastating and relentless conflicts in modern Middle Eastern history. The statement came after weeks of speculation, secret negotiations, and back-channel communications between regional and international players, and its sudden confirmation has left analysts, journalists, and world leaders scrambling to understand the deeper meaning and potential consequences of this monumental development. For months, Gaza had been a symbol of destruction and despair, its skyline reduced to ruins, its people displaced, and its infrastructure obliterated by a war that seemed to have no finish line. But now the world watches as Hamas leadership stands before the media, claiming that the chapter of war is officially closed and that Gaza will turn its eyes toward rebuilding, recovery, and political realignment. The announcement was made from an underground location in Gaza City, where senior Hamas officials appeared for the first time in weeks, visibly worn but resolute, declaring that their mission has been fulfilled. Their fighters have returned from the front lines, and their strategic objectives have been met. This statement, delivered through a televised broadcast and immediately translated into multiple languages, resonated deeply not only among the Palestinian population, but also among millions of observers worldwide who have followed every phase of this brutal conflict with anxiety and heartbreak. Hamas leaders described the decision as both a military and political move, stating that the resistance had achieved what they called a strategic deterrent victory against Israel, despite the overwhelming cost in human lives and infrastructure. According to their narrative, this declaration is not a surrender, but a transition, an acknowledgement that the war had achieved its purpose of reshaping regional power balances and proving that Gaza, despite being blockaded and besieged, could resist and survive. The announcement comes amid increasing pressure from regional allies such as Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, who had been working tirelessly to broker a lasting ceasefire, while international organizations including the United Nations and Red Cross warned that Gaza was facing a complete humanitarian collapse if the fighting did not stop. Inside Gaza, the atmosphere is a complex mix of relief and disbelief. Families who had been living in makeshift shelters for months now dare to step outside and breathe the air without the sound of drones or explosions overhead. Children stare curiously at the sky where plumes of smoke once rose, and shopkeepers cautiously reopen their stalls amid rubble-lined streets, whispering to each other that maybe, just maybe, this time the guns will stay silent. On the Israeli side, officials have yet to issue a formal response, though military analysts say the announcement caught many by surprise. Some believe it could be a tactical move by Hamas to regroup and reposition politically, while others argue it signifies a genuine shift, a recognition that endless war has drained not just Gaza, but also Israel's military endurance and international standing. Global reactions are pouring in. The White House released a carefully worded statement acknowledging the development and urging both sides to maintain restraint. The European Union welcomed the announcement as a critical first step toward regional stability, while the United Nations Secretary General called it a moment of reflection and responsibility for all parties involved. Yet beneath the diplomatic language lies a deeper uncertainty. No one truly knows whether the declaration will translate into lasting peace or merely mark another brief pause in a cycle of violence that has defined generations. Reports from within Gaza indicate that Hamas has begun coordinating with local civil defense units and international humanitarian organizations to facilitate aid, distribution, and reconstruction efforts. Engineers have been dispatched to assess damage to hospitals, water facilities, and power grids, while volunteers clear debris from what used to be residential blocks. The once bustling streets of Gaza City are now littered with fragments of war, twisted steel, shattered glass, and the haunting silence of loss. But amid that silence, the faint sounds of hope are beginning to emerge. Imams deliver sermons calling for unity and forgiveness. Community leaders speak of rebuilding with dignity, and humanitarian convoys lined up at the Rafah crossing prepare to enter with medicine, food, and equipment. For many Gazans, this declaration is more than a political milestone. It is a lifeline. Hamas's political wing has framed the end of the war as part of a broader vision to integrate Gaza into a new phase of governance and reconstruction. Spokespersons have hinted at forming a transitional administrative body that would include representatives from various Palestinian factions, potentially even coordinating with international agencies to ensure transparency in aid distribution. Analysts see this as a strategic attempt by Hamas to present itself not merely as a militant group, but as a legitimate political actor capable of leading Gaza towards stability. Still, skepticism remains high. Israel's intelligence community reportedly views the declaration with caution, suspecting that Hamas might be using the peace rhetoric as cover to rebuild its arsenal and strengthen underground infrastructure. Western intelligence assessments suggest that the group's leadership may also be seeking to mend diplomatic ties strained by months of bloodshed and to reassert its influence in the broader Palestinian political landscape ahead of potential reconciliation talks with the Palestinian Authority. Meanwhile, on the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, reactions are divided. Some Israelis express cautious optimism that the nightmare of rocket sirens and cross-border strikes may finally subside, while others demand stronger guarantees that Hamas's words will be backed by actions. Israeli families who spent nights in shelters during the war express mixed emotions: relief at the pause in violence, but anger at the immense losses suffered. The Israeli Defense Forces, while maintaining readiness along the border, have reportedly reduced aerial operations over Gaza and pulled back certain armored units as a gesture of de-escalation. Yet the scars of war are deep, and trust remains fragile. The memories of hostages, the destruction of kibbutzim, and the relentless fear of rocket attacks will not fade easily. As international media covers this unfolding moment, experts emphasize that the declaration's success will depend on what follows in the coming weeks. Humanitarian access, reconstruction funds, and political coordination must align swiftly to prevent a relapse into chaos. The international donor community, already fatigued by years of pledges and broken ceasefires, is now faced with the challenge of turning promises into tangible relief. Financial institutions in the Arab world, particularly those in Doha and Riyadh, are rumored to be preparing a major reconstruction initiative worth billions, contingent upon assurances that aid will not be diverted for military use. In Cairo, Egyptian diplomats are reportedly arranging follow-up meetings with Hamas officials and international mediators to draft a framework that could formalize this end-of-war declaration into a binding ceasefire agreement recognized by the United Nations. Yet, beneath this surface of cautious optimism, the human toll is impossible to ignore. The war has left tens of thousands dead, entire families wiped out, and countless others living with trauma that will take generations to heal. Hospitals in Gaza, many operating without electricity for months, now find themselves overwhelmed not by new casualties, but by the desperate need for rehabilitation, prosthetics, and mental health care. Aid workers describe scenes of devastation rarely seen in modern warfare: streets turned to dust, schools flattened, and neighborhoods erased from maps. Every building tells a story, every survivor carries a scar, and every child who lost their parents asks questions that no leader can easily answer. In this landscape of pain, the words "the war is over" sound both miraculous and surreal. Even within Hamas's ranks, there are differing interpretations of the declaration. Some commanders reportedly view it as a tactical pause to consolidate territorial control and strengthen governance, while others genuinely believe the era of military confrontation must give way to political endurance. Insiders say the organization's decision-making council debated the timing extensively, balancing public exhaustion, resource depletion, and mounting international pressure against ideological commitments to resistance. In the end, pragmatism appears to have won. The leadership concluded that sustaining the war any longer would risk complete collapse, economically, militarily, and socially. For Gaza's war-weary population, that pragmatic decision might be the only path left toward survival. The broader Middle East is now recalibrating in response. Iran, a key supporter of Hamas, issued a statement congratulating what it called the steadfast resistance of Gaza, while urging continued vigilance against Zionist aggression, Turkey's president expressed hope that this declaration would open a new chapter for regional peace. Saudi Arabia, often measured in its public statements, emphasized the need for a comprehensive political solution addressing Palestinian statehood, not just temporary ceasefires. Meanwhile, Western capitals remain cautious. Washington and Brussels have urged monitoring mechanisms to ensure that reconstruct. Within Gaza, the social fabric is beginning to reweave itself after being torn apart by war. Community centers are reopening, teachers are returning to classrooms that survived the bombing, and young entrepreneurs are discussing new startups and online businesses to revive the economy. Women who played critical roles in sustaining families during the war are now stepping into leadership positions in local councils and NGOs. Religious leaders are emphasizing unity, compassion, and forgiveness, urging the people not to let revenge define the future. Yet there are darker undercurrents, too. The trauma of loss has created a generation marked by grief and anger. Psychologists warn that without comprehensive mental health support, this trauma could resurface in the form of violence, despair, or radicalization. Thus, the next phase of peace will not just be about rebuilding buildings, but about rebuilding minds. Hamas's leadership understands that the world is watching closely. Any misstep, any sign of renewed militarization could unravel international support overnight. Hence, the group appears to be pursuing a strategy of controlled restraint, avoiding direct provocation while seeking to gain political legitimacy through reconstruction. Reports indicate that Hamas has begun drafting a new political document that emphasizes governance, reconstruction, and national unity over armed struggle. This shift, if genuine, could represent one of the most significant ideological transformations in the organization's history. The challenge will be sustaining it amid internal pressure from hardliners and external skepticism from rivals and adversaries alike. Meanwhile, Israel continues to maintain surveillance over Gaza, monitoring movements, and intelligence reports suggest that the Israeli Defense Forces remain on high alert for potential violations. The fragile peace depends on restraint from both sides, and one miscalculated action could ignite the fuse again. For now, though, the skies are calm. The drones that once hovered over Gaza's rooftops have largely disappeared. The nights once filled with the thunder of explosions are now eerily quiet, with only the sound of the wind blowing through broken windows and the distant laughter of children daring to play outside again. In those simple moments, the people of Gaza rediscover something they had almost forgotten, what it feels like to be alive without fear. Internationally, the declaration is sparking academic and political debates about the future of warfare, resistance, and peace-building. Experts argue that the Gaza war has reshaped global perspectives on asymmetric conflict, the role of media, and the moral limits of modern warfare. The humanitarian catastrophe has ignited new calls for accountability, with human rights groups demanding investigations into potential war crimes by all sides. The war may be over, but the pursuit of justice is just beginning. In world capitals, diplomats are already drafting resolutions. Peacekeepers are preparing contingency plans, and think tanks are analyzing how this shift could influence future conflicts in Lebanon, Syria, or beyond. In Gaza itself, as night falls, families gather around small lanterns powered by batteries and whisper prayers of gratitude and remembrance. They speak the names of loved ones lost, light candles at makeshift memorials, and vow to rebuild from the ashes. For them, this declaration is not a political document. It's a fragile promise that life can begin again. As the international community watches, it becomes clear that the end of war is only the first step in a much longer journey. Rebuilding trust, restoring faith, and redefining coexistence will take time, patience, and unwavering commitment. But for now, the guns are silent, and in that silence, a faint heartbeat of peace begins to emerge. The world has seen many ceasefires, many declarations, and many promises. But what makes this moment unique is the weariness on all sides, the collective exhaustion of endless conflict. Both Hamas and Israel, despite their differences, seem to recognize that perpetual warfare offers no victory, only survival. The people themselves, more than the politicians or generals, are the ones driving this change. Their cries, their losses, and their endurance have forced leaders to confront the unbearable cost of war. Whether this declaration stands the test of time will depend not on military might, but on moral courage. The courage to choose life over death, construction over destruction, and dialogue over domination. And so, as the sun rises over Gaza for the first morning of declared peace, the city's shattered skyline glows with a bittersweet light. The minarets stand beside broken towers, the Mediterranean waves crash softly against the shore, and birds return to the skies that once carried missiles. History may judge this day as the beginning of a new era or as another fleeting pause in an endless storm. But for now, it is a day of quiet triumph. The people of Gaza, after years of unimaginable suffering, can finally whisper words they once feared to dream. The war is over. And in that whisper lies the most powerful truth of all, that even in ruins, hope refuses to die.